Abner, I've got the power.
Take some lemon juice and hot water. That'll knock it out.
Poor Gladys. Samantha talks Gladys into believing that if anyone has magical powers, it's Gladys. What could possibly go awry with that plan? Hi, I'm Mark Simpson.
And I'm David Pierce.
And I'm Adam Michael James. Welcome to Twitch Talk.
This thing on. Where am I? Oh, there I am. G'day, it's Gary from Australia here, and I'm here to tell you that Ronald Trump has finally found a cure for COVID. It's watching Bewitched and reading this book. It's the omni-directional, it's the omni-dysfunctional, it's the Bewitched history book. It's fantastic. Even my pet kangaroo, Tabitha, loves it. Don't you, Tabitha? Oh, but I told you, yeah, it's sensational. Get going. And whether you're having a shrimp on the barbie or you're having a lovely Vegemite singer, make sure you get the book as well. Okay, catch ya. Now, how do I turn this bloody thing on?
Hi, and welcome back to Twitch Talk. I'm Mark Simpson. I'm the organizer of the Bewitched Fanfare events. Our next event is scheduled for next May in Salem, Massachusetts, and you can visit bewitchedfanfare.com for more details. I've also been a huge Bewitched fan ever since childhood. Tonight we'll be discussing episode number 29, Abner Kadabra. Now this episode was written by Lawrence J. Cohen and Fred Freeman. It was directed by William Asher, and the executive producer was Harry Ackerman. And we'll start off with the official Screen Gems episode description. Now keep in mind that these descriptions were written from an early draft of the script, and in this case contains a scene in a supermarket that did not end up in the final version. Gladys Kravitz catches Samantha twitching her nose to rearrange pictures on the wall. To keep Gladys from spreading the news, Samantha convinces her that she has extrasensory perception. Gladys starts using her supposed powers on Abner. Everything goes wrong, especially when she tries to make the rain stop. Samantha tells Gladys that supernatural powers can come and go, and that Gladys's have probably gone forever. Later, when Gladys makes a scene in a supermarket claiming the place is in grave danger, Samantha proposes a seance, hoping to scare the daylights out of Gladys. During the seance, Samantha produces an apparition which looks like a relative of Gladys's, and Abner becomes frightened. Gladys tells her husband to dry up, and Samantha changes him into a pile of ashes. When Samantha directs Gladys to swear off magic forever to get Abner back, she does so. Later, Gladys gets the same idea as Abner about going to a movie and feels that possibly she still has the power. Now let's go to David for some historical information. David?
Hi, I'm David L. Pierce. I'm from Salt Lake City, Utah, and I'm the author of the Bewitched history book. And I've been a Bewitched fan my whole life. Tonight's episode, Abner Cadabra, completed production on February 25th, 1965, and was originally broadcast on the ABC television network on Thursday, April 15th, 1965, at 9 p.m. Eastern and Pacific. This was also Elizabeth Montgomery's 32nd birthday and tax day in the United States. The #1 movie at the box office was In Harm's Way, starring John Wayne, Kirk Douglas, and Patricia Neal, and the #1 song on the Billboard charts was I'm Telling You Now by Freddie and the Dreamers. Now we'll turn things over to Mike and his continuity issues, so take it away, Mike.
I'm Adam Michael James. Of course, I'm here to put the continuity in the atmospheric continuum, so there's a few items I'm going to bring up here. The first one being the fact that there's torrential rain falling after one thundercloud. That kind of cracks me up. With something like that, usually you have a sky filled with dark gray clouds. So nobody saw this rain coming. Even Samantha mentions later on that the newspaper said there was a chance of showers, so that it just completely comes out of nowhere. I don't know. I have to mention, during the seance, when Samantha turns Abner into the pile of dust, it's actually kind of gruesome. I mean, it wouldn't be, except that Samantha and Gladys both go in and handle Abner. That's kind of icky. And then the fact that you would think that Samantha maybe just replaced Abner with a pile of dust, but he says he's really thirsty and dry afterwards, so that actually happened. And then the final thing I'm going to mention for now, there will be more later, is that Samantha rather tips her hand by talking so much about how she knows all this stuff about the occult. I mean, maybe that kind of will work on Gladys now, but surely later on, after the dust settles, Gladys is going to remember that Samantha proclaimed herself an expert on the occult. Speaking of remembering things, there is one thing I would like you all to remember, and that is I have a new book coming out October 17th, Samantha's 70s. 7 supernatural sagas of the Stevens doing the dazzling days of disco. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. It takes the characters and the show in a whole new direction, and I will be doing a virtual book launch and reading October 17th at 10:17 p.m. Eastern on my Facebook page, facebook.com/BW Continuum. So I hope you can all be there for that. Thank you, Mark, for that little bit of McMahon-entating. Back to you.
Thanks, Mike. Now we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll bring in the panel and discuss episode number 29, Abner Kadabra. Be right back.
Together for a few good laughs, the kick of adventure, a quiet moment to share a song. That's part of the fun of life.
Welcome back to Twitch Talk, and the panel is here to join us now. We have, along with David and Mike, we have some of our regulars. We have Anna, Justin, Taylor, and Susan. And Joey was here once before, but I'm going to let Joey introduce himself. So Joey, just tell us your name, where you're from, and something interesting about yourself.
Last one part's a little hard. Joseph Alamo. Bewitched fan since childhood, so good for years. Currently living in LA suburb Burbank.
Okay.
Been a huge fan.
Sounds good. And we got a couple newbies with us here today. So first, we have Barry Pintar. So Barry, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Barry. I'm from Pennsylvania. I grew up watching Bewitched. Absolutely loved it. For as long as I can remember, and it never, my love for it never went away. So much so that I went to college to be Darren Stevens. Communications. Did that for about a year after I graduated, and as things would have it, I ended up working in television. And just my passion with Bewitched now as an adult, though, is the production side of things, and just how brilliant they take simple production values and make it into this fantastic storytelling, timeless, relatable television. And so I loved it, always have loved it, and probably always will love it.
Great. Then finally we have with us Frederick Tucker, who is a big Alice Pierce aficionado. So Frederick, you want to introduce yourself?
Yep, I'm Frederick Tucker from South Carolina. I began watching Bewitched when it was originally on the air in 1964, 65. Watched it in reruns, of course. Big character actress fan. I do a lot of research on character actresses and actors, but Alice Pierce is number one. I've been researching her life and careers 45 years. So I'm happy to be here.
Great. Well, we're glad to have you. Today we're going to be talking about episode number 29, Abner Kadabra. And I'm going to have David give us a brief synopsis of the episode.
Thank you. So Gladys Kravitz catches Samantha rearranging pictures by magic, and somehow Samantha convinces Gladys that she's the one that actually did it, and they end up having a seance so that Samantha can scare the spirit out of Gladys.
Okay. So now what we'll do is we'll go through and we'll have each of you give your comments about the episode, any bloopers that you may have noticed, or just, just whatever you think about the episode. So let's go ahead and we'll start this time. We'll do the newbies first. So let's start with Barry.
I always like television, the television storyline when anybody gets busted. So in terms of how much I like this episode, Samantha getting busted for who she really is just is exciting to me. You're talking about Alice Pierce. She's just brilliant to me. She has that rubber face, kind of like Dick York did. I think both Liz and her husband, when they were casting, just like that. And of course it was big back then. So I just think they did a brilliant job. I love her in the front yard with the key.
Don't go near her. She's crazy. She's trying to turn on the sprinklers. Give me the key.
I need the key. You're forgetting about my powers. I can will the sprinklers on. Sprinklers on!
What's happening? The lawn is dying. That's what's happening. $300 worth of landscaping. Give me the key.
Yeah, it's always just brilliant storytelling. And again, the fact that Samantha gets almost busted, just kind of is busted, and then kind of turns it around and adds the seance thing is really interesting. As you also probably know, historically, Bewitched was actually very controversial in those early years because a lot of Christian religions thought it was devil stuff. It was evil. It's witchcraft because, it's devil stuff. So I actually found that fascinating that they almost kind of threw it in the face of the critics to say this is an evil show by going this and having the whole seance thing, because, they didn't go to that magical part of the world as much as just their own bewitching world. So I did, trivia wise, I find that interesting how that was written into the scripts.
All right. Very, very cool observation. How about you, Frederick? What are your feelings about this episode?
I like it because it's the only one that features the four regulars or semi-regulars, if you want to call Alice Pierce and George Tobias that. But it's the only one, I think, that it just features the four characters. it really gets Gladys and Abner off the sidelines, because normally they are not part of the main plot, but here they actually advance the plot, especially Gladys. And I just think it is a showcase for Alice Pierce and for George Tobias equally. I mean, they both shine, especially in the scene where he's on the couch and she's trying to get him to guess the number. Just to watch the chemistry between them, the rapport between them, I would compare it to Marie Barone and Frank Barone on Everybody Loves Raymond. Just the energy between them and the chemistry. And like someone just said, Alice, use that rubber face and her expressive eyes, and the episode really gives her a chance to shine. And she's, gets to display her range really as an actress.
Now, you write down a number on a piece of paper, and I'll tell you what it is.
Write down a number. Gladys, I got better things to do than to play games.
What? You've retired. Go ahead, any number.
Gladys.
Write it.
I got one life and I have to live it with her.
Let me see it. Ooh. Oh, I see some numbers. Oh. The number is 7.
Wrong, it's 1. Go make lunch.
It's a 7. See that little thing there?
It's a 1. That is a 1.
You made a 7 and you don't even know it.
You're nuts and you don't even know it. I made a 1. That's how I make a 1.
It's 7.
1.
7.
1.
7. Why won't you admit you were thinking of 7?
All right, it's a 7.
You see? I've got the power. I can do anything.
You got the power? You can do anything?
Yes.
Good. Disappear.
It's one of my favorites, and I laugh out loud, and I don't do that a whole lot watching sitcoms, but watching it again, I found myself laughing out loud, and she looks great in this one too.
Okay, so why don't we move on to David, and let's hear some of David's thoughts about the episode.
I love this episode. It's always one of my favorites, and like Frederick said, I don't normally laugh during a lot of watching these, especially since I've seen them a million times, but this one I always laugh, especially when Gladys tells Abner, I've got the power. And he says, well, take a little lemon juice. That'll knock it out. She's like, not that. Well, until you're over it, I'll sleep on the couch. And then I also love when they're starting the seance, and Gladys comes in her robes and everything. And she says, I'm here, my son. She's so freaking funny.
We've been waiting 20 minutes. Maybe you better go get her, Mr. Kravitz.
No need for that. I'm here, my son.
You look lovely tonight, my dear.
It's so good of you to come.
But back to the episode, I just love it. I love rain go away, rain go away. She's just hilarious. And Samantha, she's really beautiful. Elizabeth is super beautiful in this episode, and I love her expression when Gladys tells Abner to dry up in the seance, and she gets surprised like, oh, that's a great idea. And then when she blows on him, and the sound effect to that, perfect.
I'm ending this whole thing.
Oh, dry up. Mrs. Kravitz, what have you done? Oh, I just told him to drive.
Okay, so let's move on to Mike.
Alrighty. This episode is so much fun. I agree. Alice Pierce totally makes this episode. It's so much fun to watch. Of course, as most of you know, what I deal with is continuity. So I do pick things apart, but it's never because I don't love the show. It's because I do love the show. One of the things that I really love about this is, well, I mean, my favorite line is when she's like, now we're a peace-loving world, now we've had problems. It's so apt, right? Especially for then and especially for now.
Remember, we want peace. We're a peace-loving world. Now we've had problems.
And I also think it's very interesting that it was inevitable that eventually Gladys was going to catch Samantha. I'm a little amazed it took 29 episodes to do it. So they took that inevitability and made a really interesting story out of it, which I think was really fun. Also, I thought it was interesting that they gave Gladys a little bit of a backstory in the sense where Abner is saying that first it was yoga, then it was karate. So we know that she was always a little loopy. It wasn't just when Samantha and Darren moved on to Morning Glory Circle. I think it's kind of funny that when Samantha treats the fainted Gladys, the washcloth is dry. I know there are reasons for that, but that always cracks me up when they do that. I think it's intriguing that Samantha turns the witchcraft around on Gladys, and that you would think too that Gladys would need more proof of her powers than one number written on a piece of paper. Speaking of that number, when Samantha writes the 19 and then they cut back to the 19, it's different handwriting. It's a slanted.
There's one way to prove if you've got the power. How? I saw it on a television show once. Now, you close your eyes and concentrate, and I'm going to write a number on this piece of paper. And then you tell me what it is. 37? I did it!
But this is so... all of that doesn't matter because Gladys standing there willing it to rain makes all of that go away.
So hilarious. It's absolutely classic. How about you, Anna? What are your thoughts?
Okay, I am glad that we're doing an episode so focused on Gladys Kravitz because her depiction is really problematic for me. It's mean. And her husband is always verbally and emotionally abusive to her. She's constantly gaslit by just about everybody. And she's constantly being made fun of for her looks and sort of being held up against Samantha. And I feel in regards to Gladys and Mrs. Stevens, Samantha's really a queen bee. She never shows any compassion for them or solicitude. It's always just kind of trying to cover herself with them. She never defends them. So to me, it's just never been funny. And Bewitched is such wonderful escapism for me. And there's so much warmth in Bewitched. So for me, this is just not Bewitched.
All right, so let's move on now. Let's go to Joey and hear Joey's thoughts about this episode.
I just watched this episode, trying to grapple with how I want to phrase this. And I don't mean to always be comparing the two shows, but not only did I like the earlier comments about the Barones, I also feel like this relationship, the comparison to the Stevens, is a lot like Lucy and Ethel and Fred and Ricky, the older couple, the younger couple. The more, attractive younger couple versus the old fuddy-duddy people. But they were cast and written a certain way to be counterpoint to the stars. And I think that's all that was going on in this case. You had, the glamorous leading lady and her husband, and the conflict there because of the two different worlds, and her trying to be something that she was not. He was always asking her to do that. But yet I don't think that denigrates. I think underlying, you still see the love story there. Because there are moments where, there is affection, and it's not overt, and it's not very often, because that's not what they're about. That's not what they're there for. They're there for, the big comic relief. And this episode, I'm sorry, it was one of the best. I already forgot who wrote it. It was one of the best written episodes of all 254. I think the writing is just so witty and sharp in this, and everybody has some hysterical lines. Everybody does. But those two particular scenes where she really gets to show off her stuff. I'm not so fond of the last scene so much until it turns them into dust or whatever that's supposed to be. Because like the freaky head spirit thing's kind of like, could we not spend a little more money? But it was the 60s, so whatever.
Mrs. Kravitz, look what you've done. You better stop before it's too late. Hi, Uncle
But overall, I just think this is a fantastic episode. It shows off her comedic skills, her timing, her mugging. I mean, everything.
All right. How about Justin?
This is a great episode. The highlight of this episode for me was when Mrs. Kravitz was standing on the front lawn trying to make rain. And David already mentioned this, and you're like, ooh. And like David said, I've watched Bewitched ever since I can remember, since I was a toddler. And I've seen these episodes so many times, I usually don't laugh. But when I watch that scene, I laugh. It's comedy gold, and it really showcases how good Alice Pierce was in the role. One thing about this episode that struck me was during the seance, Abner got turned into a pile of ashes. I would think that when that happened to Mrs. Kravitz, she would be so traumatized by that. Anytime she saw any kind of magic, she would run the other way and never get anywhere close to that. She went at Snoop, she went at Metal, she'd be scared for life away from that. Glad that didn't happen because, as I said before, I think she added a lot to the show. And I just want to say I love this episode. Well, thank you.
So let's move on to Taylor.
Hello. So I will say I both fully love this episode. Both love it. And I full-throated agree with everything Anna said. What can I say? I contain contradiction. So I wanted to put on my TV history professor hat and also say one other thing that I think is really interesting about this episode. At the end of every episode of Bewitched, look for this logo. This is the logo for the National Association of Broadcasters Code of Practices for Television Broadcasters. They called it the Television Code for short. This is sort of building on what Barry was talking about. While Bewitched occasionally did go above and beyond the rules, Darren and Samantha were one of the first couples to sleep in the same bed, for instance, on TV. This episode in particular would have been flagged by censors because it contained something that broke a specific prohibition in the television code, which was exhibitions of fortune-telling, astrology, phrenology, palm reading, or numerology. While Samantha's witchly powers don't actually break that wall, the seance very much would have been against the television code. So this is one of the things censors would immediately have picked up on to make sure that it was treated as ridiculous and silly and over the top. And so if you see a lot of hyperbolic comedy in the episode, it's for that reason. The last thing I'll say is something that a lot of other people have touched on, that I think the scariest scene in all of Bewitched, the scariest use of magic, is when Samantha, with nothing more than a blow of her lips, turns Abner into a pile of dust. That's absolutely terrifying. Those are some things I thought about this episode.
Yeah, well, you had mentioned that to me a while back about that being your scariest moment. But to me, the scariest moment is in It's Magic when she blows up Roxy. when she just disintegrates her. To me, that's scarier than turning Abner into a pile of dust. But that's just
But Abner's her neighbor. I wish I had that power in there.
I know. All right. And finally, how about Susan?
I want to say that, like David, I have watched this so many times, and a lot of times the comedy just sort of washes over me because I've seen it before. I know what's coming, and it's not funny. But this episode made me laugh out loud 3 times, just belly laugh. And I was trying to be quiet because Stephen was doing something. But it's when Gladys is talking about whatever she saw just then, and Abner says, "Gladys, have you been chewing on your electric blanket again?"
You better go home.
What is it?
She says she's getting vibrations.
Vibrations? She's chewing on the electric blanket again.
That just cracks me up. Then when they're having the seance and they're holding hands, and out of nowhere, Darren says, "Mr. Kravitz, my hand!"
Must be windy out. Mr. Kravitz, you're hurting my hand.
And the last one was when, after she changes him into dust, and Darren says, "Don't anybody sneeze," and he's deadly serious. And that made me laugh out loud, too.
Oh, please come back. I should have started all this. What can I do?
Whatever you do, don't sneeze.
The other thing was Darren comes home from work at the beginning, and it's a beautiful sunny California day, and of course he's in his convertible, and he gets out of the car, hops out, walks in, and then of course, and there's no thought about, "Oh my God, I left the top off the car," I didn't put it up. Nothing. It's just that car gets soaked full of rain.
So I love the episode. I think it was David was mentioning about the scene when Abner's on the sofa, and she says, "I've got the power," and he's like, "Well, just take some lemon juice and hot water; it will knock it right out." And then from there, she's like, "No, what? It's ESP." And he's like, ESP. Oh, I get it. Esther Perlman's coming.
The initials ESP mean anything to you?
ESP. ESP. Oh, now I get all this funny business. Esther Perlman's coming, right?
It's just so hilarious. The whole episode is so hilarious. Her on the front lawn, and the way she's like when it starts to rain and she's waving the sprinkler key around and she's dancing, and it's like, oh my God, it's just so hilarious. And I think about her getting wet like that, getting drenched like that, and just thinking that, she was sick while she was doing all of this, the entire time that she was on the show, she was fighting cancer, and she was just such a trooper. I love this episode. I think it's great, and I think that she's just brilliant. Alice Pierce is just brilliant, and that's all I can say. So. All right, so let's take a break, and we'll be back in just a minute.
"50 years ago this week, the mayor of Salem, Massachusetts, Samuel Zoll, declared Thursday, October 8th, 1970, as Bewitched Day in Salem to coincide with the airing of the Salem Saga, the first season 7 episode of Bewitched to feature on-location scenes. The cast and crew spent a week in June of 1970 filming scenes in Salem and Gloucester for an 8-episode story arc in which the Stevenses travel to Salem so Samantha can attend the Witches' Convocation. That visit 50 years ago increased tourism to the Witch City and continues to attract visitors from around the world to this day. At the time, producer William Asher predicted that Samantha would be directing traffic in Salem for years to come, and he was proven right when TV Land installed the Samantha Stevens statue in Lapin Park on June 15, 2005. Happy Bewitched Day in Salem!
And now, Twitch Talk brings you a very special, bewitching announcement.
Oh, hi. Don't mind me. I just had to change back before I got towed away. Nothing. Hey, Bewitched fans, it's me, Adam Michael James, and if you have been online at all the last couple of years, you know that I am the author of the Bewitched Continuum, the ultimate linear guide to the show, and also I, Samantha, Take This Mortal Darren, my imagined series finale.
She just loves happy endings.
Now that's exactly what I, Sam, was supposed to be when I wrote it. The end. Only thing is, Samantha and Darren and Adam and Tabitha and Endora and Larry, even Serena, Arthur, and Clara all decided that they had more that they wanted to say.
I ought to know.
So who might argue? I'm proud to announce right here in this bathtub, Samantha's 70s. 7 supernatural sagas of the Stevens doing the dazzling days of disco. Starting in 1973 and going all the way up to 1979, Samantha's 70s starts where I, Sam, left off, where the mortals in Samantha's world are dealing with the repercussions of finding out that she's a witch. Then Aunt Clara gets a backstory and a twin as a result of her first witch illness. Then the Stevens might be having another baby. But are they ready for it? That brings us to 1976, where our mortals celebrate the bicentennial, while our witches explore their attitude toward mortals in a story that really needs to be told today. And they grow up so fast, Tabitha jumps to a 25-year-old in a purposeful nod to the Tabitha series. Not to be outdone, our witches and mortals come together for their very first Christmas ever. And finally, wedding bells ring across the atmospheric continuum for a surprise couple that may not be a surprise if you read Isam.
And who would that be?
I have been having so much fun revisiting all our beloved Bewitched characters, and I have a feeling that you will too. Samantha's 70s, October 17th.
I think it's terrific.
At 10:17 p.m. Eastern that night, 7:17 p.m. Pacific, I will be having a virtual book launch and reading on my Facebook page, facebook.com/BWContinuum. Keep checking back for details. I can't wait to see you guys. Excuse me. I have to go dry off. What are you waiting for? Mark your calendars for October 17th and soak in the magic of my new book, Samantha's 70s.
Alice Pierce's face was her fortune. She realized, from a very young age that she could not be a beauty queen. She considered her mother to be one. Alice's chin, or chinless face, came about because of a childhood accident. She was swinging high on a swing and trying to impress some boys, she once said, and she fell out of the swing and landed on her chin. And her mother took her to surgeons all over Europe because, she grew up in Europe, in Brussels and Paris. And her mother took her to all these specialists and surgeons and nothing could be done. So her chin was permanently stunted. So she had the chin of a 9-year-old. And she had a parrot hawk-shaped nose. And yes, she was cast in these uncouth, unattractive parts. But she realized that was her thing. And she, to begin with, was a huge hit in nightclubs in New York, especially the Blue Angel. And she held a record there. And because of her looks and her odd behavior, she made a career out of this. I mean, she knew on which side her bread was buttered. And there are many articles that mention her appearance back then and even now. But she was, to me, a very beautiful person. She had gorgeous eyes, beautiful complexion. You don't get to see any of that really on television, but maybe some of the photographs in my book will show that. The main thing about Alice was she was beautiful on the inside, but to me she was still beautiful on the outside. I mean, there are lots of pictures that you will see in the book. If she was photographed at the right angle, she was lovely, but she didn't think so. She always compared herself to her mother. She was a very shy child. She was an only child, came from a privileged background. Her mother was a socialite, and Alice, that just wasn't her thing. She wasn't comfortable in the living room or the parlor, and she wanted to make people laugh. She wanted to be on the stage, and her parents, they had other plans for her. You know, they sent her to these exclusive schools. They wanted her to marry a lawyer or a doctor, join the junior league and the DAR and that kind of thing, and she just was not having it.
Okay, well, welcome back to Twitch Talk, and now we're going to go through, we're going to give our reviews and our ratings. We're going to rate the episode from 1 to 4 stars, 1 being the worst, 4 being the best, and then we'll go back afterwards and we will average it out, and we will determine the overall rating for this episode. So again, we're talking about episode number 29, Abner Kadabra. And let's start with David.
Well, like I said before, I love this episode, so I definitely give it 4 stars. It's absolutely in the top tier of all 8 seasons.
Okay. Mike.
This episode is so much fun for all the reasons stated. Despite my little continuity observations, the dialogue is wonderful, and it does give Gladys such a chance to shine. I will give this 3.5.
Okay. How about Anna?
Okay. Even the worst Bewitched episode is way above just about everything else. So I'm going to give it a 1.
Oh my God. She had a 2, but we've never had a 1.
We haven't done Soapbox Derby yet.
Or Laugh Clown Laugh.
And a Laugh Clown Laugh would be like a negative 47.
Good for you, Anna. Way to stand your ground.
Okay, how about Joey?
4 stars. Exemplary writing, showcase for Alice Pierce. Great all around, I think. One of my favorites, top 10.
All right. Justin.
Love this episode. Such great acting by Alice Pierce. Great comedy material. 4 stars.
Okay, and we'll move on to Taylor.
Alice Pierce is a treasure. But again, I have to agree with Anna. So I'm going to give this, just because I love her so much, a 2.5. Am I out of the group?
2.5 is better than 1. Susan, how about you?
All of the comments about this anti-feminism in it, I set aside and put that in a box. And looking at the episode through my 1966 eyes, is that right? 65, excuse me. I'm going to give it a 4 because I think the writing is brilliant. The repartee between Alice and George is just sparkling. It just is stunning. So I give it a 4.
Okay, how about you, Barry?
Great comedy, great suspense as to what's going to happen next. Excellent characterization, character acting. acting by Alice Pierce, I give it a 4.
Okay, and finally, Frederick.
You already know my rating. It's a 4. Alice inhabits the role of Gladys in this episode. So 4.
Okay, well, I think we know that I'm going to give this 4 stars. I love this episode. I think it's just hilarious. Again, it's just Alice Pierce and George Tobias. I mean, their banter back and forth. It's brilliant. That's all I can say. And the episode is laugh out loud funny. You know, a lot of the episodes are amusing, you know, but you don't actually find yourself, you know, laughing out loud. And this is one of the ones that you do. I think this one and Illegal Separation, I think, you know, they're just laugh out loud funny. So I give it 4 stars. So let's calculate the overall rating, and we come up with 3.5 stars. Last time we had 3.5 stars, and I said we could go either way, so I went up to 4. But this time I'm going to take, you know, Anna's comments into consideration and Taylor's comments into consideration. So I'm going to go with 3 stars on this one. Okay, well, we're going to take another break, and then we'll be right back. Join us for our next episode, which is our Halloween show, and we'll be discussing episode number 115, A Safe and Sane Halloween.
My friends.
Gentlemen, people love classic TV. And what's more classic than Bewitched? But in the 60s, audiences didn't demand the same level of continuity that we expect today. So how to make sense of 8 seasons of Bewitched? The Bewitched Continuum, the only book to compare and contrast all 254 episodes, along with witch illnesses, top 10s, and more. It's the ultimate linear guide. And the slogan? The Bewitched Continuum. Come feel the magic.
Now available on Amazon.com.
So welcome back to Twitch Talk, and before we wrap it up, does anybody have anything else that they want to add? Anybody? David, Mike?
I'd like to say one thing.
Sure.
Really, Alice had greater opportunity to shine in season 1 than season 2. Just the way things were written. They were kind of slow catching on to, I think, using the Kravitzes, because really, you know, she and George Tobias did not get a contract until mid-October. And then they got their contracts where they were to appear in 13 out of 26 episodes. So I guess once they started filming, like the first 3 that had the Kravitzes in them, the first 3, not continuous episodes, but the first 3 featuring them, I guess they saw, hey, this is something good and we need to run with it. But I guess other scripts had already been written. So there's this big gap between Little Pictures have big, what was it, fears? Little Pictures?
Yeah. Little Pictures have
there's this gap between that and the next one that they filmed. But then they started cranking out the Gladys and Abner episodes, you know, once they had those contracts, and I'm glad they did.
Okay, so
I actually have one thing,
okay.
One quick thing. Gonna pull a Larry Tate here. Samantha 70s comes out October 17th. Please join me on the Bewitched Continuum Facebook page, because I'm gonna do a virtual book launch at 10:17 p.m. Eastern Time, October 17th. Be there.
All right, well, I want to thank everyone for joining us. I want to thank my co-hosts, David Pierce and Adam Michael James. I want to thank Anna, Joey, Justin, Taylor, Susan, Barry, and Frederick. And join us next time on Twitch Talk. It's going to be our Halloween show. And we'll see you next time. Best Twitches, everyone.
Cheers.